Top 10 Survivor Immunity Challenges from all seasons. Survivor has stood the test of time with 38 seasons from the year 2000 to 2019. The show has continued to inspire and challenge participants as well as viewers. Today we count down immunity challenges from the different seasons. Sit tight as we go through the rocky experiences. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Let's get it going. 10. Vertigo Cagayan. Survivor isolates participants from their family members and friends. Once in a while, the loved ones get to join the participants and watch as they battle for survival. For the Vertigo Challenge, participants were supposed to climb a pole in the ocean. Then they'd lower a bucket into the ocean and pour it in a chute, raising the key. Once they had the key, the participants would swim back to shore and unlock a box with blocks to a puzzle. Standing on the pole alone was a challenge for the participants. Not anything anyone with a fear of heights would enjoy. It was also a challenge for those who couldn't swim because they had to climb down the pole. Cass was left trying to fill her chute with water as the others worked on their puzzle. She finally made it to reach her key and did a remarkable job with the blocks. And she won immunity. Wow. Puzzles have always been part of Survivor, and the next obstacle involved another complicated puzzle in the show. 9. Sixth Immunity Challenge, Edge of Extinction. The tribes battled it out for immunity, and only one tribe would be safe at the end of the course. The quest was to climb up a ladder and retrieve a bag through a bamboo cage. The tribes would use a ball inside a bag to unlock a cage, then sprint to the finish line to solve the Survivor puzzle. Climbing the ladder wasn't a challenge, but tracing the bag through the bamboo poles was one heck of a job. All tribes successfully opened the cage using the balls, then they were faced with the hardest challenge, the slide puzzle. Slide puzzles are great indoor games, but they could take ages to solve. Only 2 members at a time could work the puzzle, and they finally cracked their heads to fit the pieces. Finally, Kaôh tribe, which had an early lead from the beginning, managed to solve the slide puzzle and won the immunity challenge. The other 2 tribes were on their way to the tribal council. One of the hardest parts of Survivor is eliminating a fellow contestant. It gets emotional sometimes, but there can be only one winner. 8. Coconut Challenge, Pearl Island. After spending a couple days in a foreign land, how much do contestants learn about the area? Let's find out in the next challenge. The contestants would be asked a series of hard questions about their location history. Every time they'd answer a question correctly, they'd take one of their coconuts and place it in another person's pile. The first person to have 5 coconuts on their holder would be eliminated, and the last person standing would win immunity. Ryan found himself on the receiving end when 4 contestants placed their coconuts on his holder on the first round. Poor guy. He was eliminated during the second round of questions. Little by little, they each got eliminated until there was only 2 people left. The best way to survive was to put on a smile even after contestants ganged up on a fellow competitor. Rupert was the last man standing, and the rest of the members had the afternoon to think about who they'd vote out of the competition. Oops, a second blow for the day. There's always a twist even to the easiest challenges on Survivor, like the one we'll look at next. 7. Feet Only Challenge, San Juan del Sur. The course involved unspooling a rope and dropping ropes into a blanket. The first people to get their blocks arranged with a flag in the middle would win. It sounds quite easy, but not if one is only using their feet for the entire challenge. It was the first time the Survivor participants would just use their feet for a challenge. The challenge tested their concentration and balance because using their feet to pick up and arrange blocks wasn't something anyone had practiced at home. They all untied the rope successfully, but arranging the blocks was the bigger monster. There were 21 pieces in total, 7 at the bottom, 7 in the middle, and 7 on top. The higher the blocks went, the harder it became to place them, and many fell on other pieces. Eventually, Baylor managed to complete her stack and set the flag in the middle. The goal when it comes to Survivor is the money, and if the competitors aren't well prepared, money could slip through their fingers. Literally. 6. Final Immunity Challenge, Thailand. With only 3 people left in the season, the stakes were high for each of the participants. Their last challenge would take place in the darkest place in a cave. The journey inside the cave was already creepy enough with the darkness and the bats. For the challenge, they'd place 6 coins between their fingers and stand in a tiring tie position. The longer they'd stand, the harder it'd become. The coins would start to slip off their fingers, and the first 2 people to drop all their coins would lose. There was initial comfort, which then turned to pain, and the trick was to block out the pain, which isn't an easy thing to do. 4 minutes later, the participants were going strong, but by the time they got to the 8th minute, they were already sweating. 12 minutes later, 2 of the participants gave up and dropped the coins. Temperatures of over 100 degrees are high even for a person with a lot of melanin. The survivors' strengths were put to the test somewhere in Africa. 5. Final immunity, Africa. After battling it out through wild animals, the open savanna, and other foreign environmental conditions, it was time for the participants to fight for their final spot in the hot sun. The finalists were supposed to stand on blocks of wood and hold on to an idol for as long as they could. They started in the morning, and the challenge was easy at the beginning. 1 hour later, they were still strong. But the bad news was, it was only 9 o'clock. The sun had yet to unleash its full potential. 2 hours later, the temperatures rose to 94 degrees. It got harder for the contestants to hold on to the idol, and they started shaking. 2 hours and 26 minutes later, the first participant gave up on the challenge. A few minutes later, the temperature rose to 101 degrees. 3 hours and 21 minutes later, the temperature was at 104 degrees, and the second participant couldn't stand it any longer and decided to give in. Let's now have a look far away from the hot grasslands in Africa and experience another challenge in the rainy Amazon. 4. Maze Challenge, Amazon. It's hard enough to battle it out for immunity on dry land. Participants were faced with the challenge of finding their way in a maze while it was raining. To make it worse, they were blindfolded throughout the process. The maze challenge involved raised signposts with braille written on them to help point the castaways in the direction of the items or the end of the maze. The first participant to accomplish all the tasks and make it back to the middle of the maze would win the challenge. Amidst the rain, the contestants were required to locate 4 medallions representing the 4 elements: water, earth, fire, and air, and return them to the center of the maze. And then everything will change when the Fire Nation attacks. The journey through the maze was hectic and confusing. It's difficult to find your way in a maze without blindfolds. Imagine how hard it can be with blindfolds on. Matthew and Jenna maintained an early lead and found their way through the maze. 2 participants ganged up against Jenna, but she still remained optimistic in the maze. Eventually, she located all 4 medallions and won immunity for the episode. The next challenge on Survivor is one of the few which a viewer can participate in, but make sure you're well fed and rested before trying it out. 3. Color Challenge, Cagayan. After testing the participants' physical strength and speed, it was time to test their memory using colors. Jeff would hold up a series of colors, and the competitors would arrange them in the correct sequence. It may seem like a simple thing, but not for people who have been competing for 25 days with fatigue eating them up. The first round only consisted of 4 colors, and not everyone got all the colors right. Trish, the first person, didn't make it through the second color of the first round. Lou, the second person on the competition, couldn't make it through the third color on the first round. The next round got more difficult with a series of 7 colors. The second round eliminated many of the participants on the 6th color, and they were down to 3 survivors. The last block eliminated 2 other competitors, and Tasha won immunity. A strategy is critical when participating in a show like Survivor. Participants always have to think of ways that they can get the upper hand throughout the competition. 2. Ball Challenge, David versus Goliath. For the day's challenge, the competitors were to race through poles and retrieve a ball. Then they'd balance the ball as they walked across a beam and then maneuver the ball through a track and into a hole. The first to successfully place 3 balls in the pits would win immunity. Some of the competitors jumped over the whole pile of poles, using one jump, giving them a head start as the others made it through the poles one by one. Getting 3 of the balls across the beams was difficult for most participants, and only 2 managed to get an early lead. Within no time, the majority were competing on the tracks for the chance to win immunity. Alec, who had taken the first leap in the beginning, carefully directed all 3 balls into the holes and won immunity. Puzzles are not the only Survivor Classic challenges. Food competition also happens to be a favorite. And when we talk about food, it's not burger and fries. The participants are challenged to eat living creatures, which could range from living insects to crawling animals. 1. Pesky Palate, Blood versus Water. Jeff decided to take the challenge back to the first season when all the participants ate all sorts of crawling animals for the immunity. The dish was presented to the individuals, and the appetizer was a handful of living worms. Ugh. Natives of the area apparently ate the worms as a snack, so they were safe to eat. The first 3 to eat 40 worms and show Jeff an empty mouth would move on to the next round. It was the hardest food challenge to swallow, but 3 managed to eat the worms and move on to the next round, hoping for something more enticing. The next lot of 5 also tried their luck, and 3 managed to chew and swallow the worms successfully. Well, the next meal wasn't any better, and only 2 people would move on to the next round. The second meal was much more difficult, and spitting it out was inevitable. The bravest 2 finally managed to clear their palates without vomiting. It was down to Gervais and Monica. Gervais had participated in the challenge in season 1, and 13 years later, the show served him with the one thing he couldn't eat: larvae. Once again, he was unable to stand the meal, and Monica won the challenge. Thanks for watching, and have an excellent day.